No one sees the head bop.
Alex, I love that we don't have an official rule not to talk during the intro, but something about you immediately saying no one sees the head bop and then dead silence. Aside from the intro music, really does it for me.
God.
Welcome back to the Radio Gamescast. As always, I'm your host, Ryan. Today I'm joined by my lovely cohort of co-hosts, Brett.
Hello.
Alex.
I have no sense of timing.
And what?
Well, the most important part of all comedy is...
Wow. All right. Well, this is the belated Halloween episode because I was traveling and unfortunately came back with COVID for the Halloween episode. So we had to push it back a week.
It's a fun souvenir to bring back with you.
The best souvenir that I brought back, by far. I mean, nothing else compared to really just being in bed for a day.
The gift that keeps giving.
The gift that kept giving, yes. Thankfully, I'm very much over it now. I've tested negative and all that. So we're back to the regular podcast flow, which means it's time for some Halloween vibes in early November. Which don't we all love? You know, as long as we can avoid Thanksgiving, I think. It's really the intent here.
I'll be honest with you, I was seeing Christmas decorations in certain stores in October, so if we push Halloween into November, I'm not even going to be that, like, that's fine.
You know what,
totally okay.
But since we're officially past it, unfortunately, you know what that means. She's begun defrosting.
She's already defrosted.
Yeah.
There's so many good memes of like it's Mariah Carey and she's like distressingly smoking a cigarette and it's like she knows what time it is.
My favorite one is Final Fantasy XIV fans made a meme post of Mariah Carey as a raid boss.
Oh my god.
It's hilarious. All right. Well, speaking of hilarious, we have costumes that we're all going to show to you all and immediately see for the first time, most likely.
Probably.
You folks can turn your cameras on and bask in the wonder that is Gurgle.
My god.
I love Gurgle.
Good old... Why? What is that? Is that a specific character? I'm about to embarrass myself.
This is a Sea of Thieves pirate.
I see.
It is definitely a Sea of Thieves pirate, and not a random pirate costume that I cobbled together at a Spirit Halloween.
Wyatt, let's see. Is this really Sea of Thieves? Let's see how fast you're able to swing that machete.
You have the animation set down? You do the He's really having to try and jump there.
Oh god, I'm exhausted.
Oh yeah, that's Sea of Thieves.
Yeah, really exhausted.
See that? He's entirely out of energy too. Wild how accurate that is.
So accurate.
I also was going to drink out of this originally, but it's from Spirit Halloween, and even after washing it, quite frankly, I don't trust it. So
probably a good choice, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised by that choice. Brett just moved, so we have Codec Call Brett today.
Yes, of course.
Of course, it's a little bit squished because our overlay is not the same size as the image. And Alex as Kakyoin.
Yep,
which is
I'm the
quite
resident
good.
weeb. Everyone's favorite redhead with a hole in his chest.
What a great introduction. And I was going to do my Diablo Druid costume, but I wore that thing 2 days ago for BlizzCon. And it needs to get washed, quite frankly.
This makes sense.
Very hot.
Well, in many ways, that would have added to the immersion of the costume.
Oh,
It's real
for
infield
sure, yeah.
smell.
But I've got some nice Halloween lights up, and that's about it. That's the full immensitude of my Halloween preparedness this year.
Oh my god! Wait, you know what I just realized?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you can button this up. I actually didn't realize this until.
Did you not realize
there
it's
we
actually
go.
the right type of hat?
Hold on.
I hope you do that, and then like halfway through the episode,
I
it just
love that you have
unsnaps
the
and
bandana
flips you in the
on
nose.
underneath that none of us would have seen had you not taken the hat off.
That came with the costume, and I was like, might as well, right? There's also I have a definitely not medallion thing from Pirates of the Caribbean. Absolutely not. Totally not. The
Definitely
same thing
not.
whatsoever.
Totally original.
Oh, I like the all sides down sort of bayou pirate you got going on.
The Bayou Pirate.
It's really the amount of content we're getting out of Wyatt struggling with this hat is astounding.
Okay, I'm doing this with one eye shut. All right, give me a little bit of credit here.
I mean, this is better than Gang Beasts, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, this is truly unbeatable content.
Just it's the same thing, really. It's watching someone flail around. It's pretty fun.
You know what? It's funny because I was looking for like that traditional like tri-corner pirate hat, and I was shocked that the Spirit Halloween didn't have it, but they did have this hat that was a pirate hat, and I was like, oh, I guess it's just like a wide brim pirate hat. But no, they have the oh boy, now it doesn't really fit. But okay, there we go. Perfect.
That's pretty good.
There you go. See, it's a versatile.
Versatile hat.
This was a great investment. I don't know what you're talking about.
Hey, what, you want to remind us how much you spent on that costume?
No, I absolutely don't.
Oh.
All I'll say is it was my first time going to a Spirit Halloween, and at first I was charmed by. There's something really charming about cheap Halloween costumes, and then I looked at the price and realized they're not that cheap.
No, they're not cheap. Although I do want to point out, this thing does have the Murloc spines down the entire back. It is the whole thing. It's pretty good. These are quality kigurumis that a BlizzCon thing they do every year. And then you get a bunch of people in Murloc kigurumis to run around the convention, which is quite fun. It's a good time. All right. Well, we're here to talk about Halloween games. That's ostensibly the purpose of this episode, so we're gonna go ahead and jump right into it. We've all been playing one or more Halloween themed things. Anyone want to kick it off, or should I go ahead and kick it off with Dredge? I'm gonna kick it off with Dredge because no one said something in the 2-second window.
That was
So
like literally like 1.5 seconds.
look, this is a podcast. We keep moving, or the content is dead. People leave if there's no air, Brett.
Listen, if there's dead air, there might as well not be a podcast.
You gotta claim your space.
You gotta earn the right to be here.
No, we should not turn into one of those alpha podcasts.
Oh
God.
no! Oh Christ!
All right.
Not here to be one of those brokies. You know what I'm saying? Ugh. Anyway,
let's talk about fishing. Let's talk about Dredge.
Oh yes.
Which is the horror fishing game. Now, I want to be very clear here. Normally, for the whole month of October, will go through and generally play a bunch of like old classic horror games that I never got to play. Last year it was a bunch of Resident Evil. This year I had a Disney trip smack in the middle of October that was 2 weeks long, so very little time to actually play any horror games. So I picked one I could play on my Switch, which was Dredge. And Dredge is a good time. It's a fishing game about a little boat that you have. You wake up going to this island and talking to people, and they're all being very coy about Lovecraftian things going on. But you got to go out and fish, and if it becomes night while you're fishing, things happen, and you give a panic meter that gradually gets worse, and then a giant sea monster shows up and eats you. And it's really interesting, but my thing with Dredge is I've played about, I want to say 4-ish hours of it so far, maybe 5. And I've yet to see the point, right? Like, it's got the vibe of the horror and the fishing, but the fishing minigames are pretty simple. They're all multiple minigames, thankfully. I'm a big minigames person, and every fish has its own minigame. So it's got its own, like, fishing reel meter, but it is just like a reel meter. It's not like, you don't see, like, animations or anything like that. It's just a little, you press the button in the green window and you're good. The windows are just different shapes, generally. And I don't know if this gets crazier later on. I suspect it will, because some of them have funkier things that are a little bit harder to do. But so far, it's been a very slow burn start, and I was very surprised by that, because I'd heard from a lot of people this is a pretty quick game overall, and I don't know how deep into it I am. There's not really an easy way to track progress, but I've seen maybe about a third of the map, so pretty deep, I would suspect. And yeah, it's yet to reveal a hook to me that actually, fishing pun, gets me. Which I was surprised by, because I was very excited for this game, but I'm actually kind of having like a flatline experience while playing it.
I'm a little surprised too, because I was expecting this to be everyone else at 001 likes it more than Brett would care. And yet,
Ryan,
Have
do
you
you
played it,
know?
I've not.
Do you know the origins of Dredge?
I do know the origins of Dredge, of that old, like, what is it, Tumblr post?
Yeah, it's based off of a Tumblr post.
It's a very
What?
funny one where it's basically an Eldritch horror game, and the Tumblr post was like, it gets creepier and creepier the whole time, but at the end of the game, there's no actual monster, and you wake up just with your notebook saying you did a good job, something like that.
Oh, specifically, and this is definitely a me thing that I would appreciate about the game that I'm really surprised I haven't played it yet about. But the specific pun at the end of the entire post was "You did real good," spelled REEL.
Yeah, and I have. There we go. There's the use case for the
There's
drums.
your one. There's
That's
your
your one.
You were waiting to use that since we hit the record button.
Yeah, you were so ready.
Yep.
But yeah, I've had an interesting time with this game because it really has been like I expected to be more into it than I actually am, and I'm really surprised that I'm not. But I actually think the reason I'm not is because I've played games in a similar vein to this before, which I don't think anyone else here has played, called the Sunless games. So Sunless Seas and Sunless Skies.
I've heard of
Really,
them.
really phenomenal indie games that are basically just like narrative adventure, almost roguelikes in a way of like you're expected to die, but then your story gets different every time you respawn. And you like carry a legacy of captains as you're playing. And I think the thing that's missing here for me is the thing that Sunless Seas and Skies do of that more interesting like world and character progression that is actually happening. Because every time right now I've gotten to something interesting in Dredge, the character has basically gone, oh, but I'm not going to tell you about that. I'm going to make it sound ominous and then back into a corner, which is, it's a good way to start a story, but every character I've talked to has done that so far, and there hasn't been like a reveal moment. Aside from one character who will read words from a book and give you magic powers occasionally, which is very cool, but it's only happened once so far. And yeah, there's just not been as much of that emergent sort of storytelling that I think I was expecting from this game, because that's kind of what it was pitched as, was this like eldritch fishing game with more going on under the hood, and I've yet to see them more. And I know it has upcoming DLC, so I'm probably going to get to the end of the base game, because I am enjoying it. It's just very much, I'm not to the hook yet. I'm to the like, I'm at the point where I'm like, I've been fishing for a while, I've got my boat upgraded, what's the second thing now? What's the other thing that's going to happen? And so far it hasn't, which has been unfortunate, and I think it's a trap a lot of indie games can fall into, of like just having a loop that is missing one element that I have a feeling Dredge has in it, because I keep hearing that this game is really good from a lot of people. So I expect it's there, and I just haven't hit it yet, but it is interesting that that's been the case.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of the time too, it's like hard to put your finger on what that even is, because I've definitely felt that too with some other games that like on the surface, haha, they should be like right up my alley or whatever, and then I end up playing them for like 3 hours and then never touching them ever again. And it is just because they're just missing one mysterious ingredient in the vibe, even, that's just like not there for some reason.
And what I do want to
weird.
get super clear about Dredge is the vibe is there. The vibe is perfect, but that's where it ends. Like the vibe is where it stops.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to see the furthering of that somewhere, and especially because the game has this interesting like day-night cycle where night is a lot more dangerous, and things will happen. Like you have a lantern on your ship that can go out, and that lantern reveals like rocks that aren't there during daytime. So if you are moving along and you crash into something, there's like an inventory space in your hull will get taken out that you have to deal with, and you might lose a fish or something. But the inventory Tetris hasn't been super interesting yet either, because it's a really small space at the start. Like it just isn't much to work with. So it sort of feels like early RE2, where it's not a puzzle yet because you just can't fit very much. So you're just kind of taking everything back to your storage or something. And that has been my experience with Dredge so far. Like it's not actually a puzzle yet, because I'm just sort of
A lot of back and forth.
Yeah, I'm just like basically as soon as I fill up, I go back to base, but my inventory is not big enough to fill up further away from the like fishing town, so I have to go back, because anytime I move further out, my inventory is full immediately. So I'm not getting to like the harder, riskier content because it's filling up so quickly that there's just not any space for you to put other stuff. And you can like increase the ship size dramatically. Like there is a much bigger inventory space that you can get to, but that's locked behind a pretty grindy loop, to be honest, which surprised me. Like I'm finally the first ship hull size upgrade, and it took a while. Like that was a solid 2 hours of actually like going and hunting materials to get to that point. So, which is weird to describe this like Eldritch fishing game as grinding and going to hunt materials, but that really is what it feels like.
The real horror were the hours you wasted along the way.
Yeah, but again, it feels like there's something there that I'm just not to yet, so I want to get to that point because all the discourse around this game is super positive generally. So I think I'm just not there, but I expected it to have. I should have been at that point sooner, I think. And it's maybe I'm playing this in a weird way because most of my playtime is like handheld on the Switch, so I'm not really sitting down for a longer play session to do something at any one given point in time, and maybe I just need to sit down with it for a longer time. But yeah, it was not grabbing me the way that I had hoped it would.
Yeah, it's interesting with like especially with horror games or at least games that have some sort of spooky atmosphere to it. It's like you have to start with the atmosphere, you got to start with the vibes, but then you really have to like that gets old really quick if you don't do anything with it, right? You really have to like keep it going. You have to keep that momentum going because if you just rely on it for too long, it just starts to lose its effect after a while.
Yeah, and there is like another layer in the story going on of it. It seems like, and again, I've only played a small amount of this game relative to like the whole runtime of it, so I don't know if this is true, but it seems to be setting up the idea that the reason that you kind of just woke up on your way to the island is because of some weird thing of like the fishermen being multiple things. Like I found at one point a copy of my boat that was wrecked that I could go inside and look at, but of course going inside and looking at and Dredge is you reading through a text box and choosing choices, which is fine, but comparing it then to like the Sunless games, it's dramatically less flavorful than those. So it just felt less, it was less fun to do the reading because the reading wasn't as prosy and like interesting to read. Which is also like commonly an issue with I think a lot of Lovecraft stories is the reason a lot of people like Lovecraft stuff but don't read the books is because they're pretty dense is like a thing and not super fun to read. But the world building is great, and I think Dredge is in a similar place right now. And it seems to me they're setting up the idea that like there's some cycle of your fishermen coming here and then leaving and then coming back, or maybe it's copies of him or something. But it's weird that I've hit that point already. Like I expected that to have been like the end point of the mystery and not the hook.
Without
they're
getting
trying
to
to
the
drag.
hook.
Yeah, it feels like I've already kind of figured it out at the point I'm at. And again, I don't know any other details about this game aside from what I've played. So I don't know if that's actually the case. I could be totally off base with that being the end point. I hope I am. I hope that is just like the starting point and not the end point.
Or even, if you're if you're just starting out, like that could be the start point, and then it just gets stranger from there, which could be kind of exciting. But
yeah, that's what I really hope it is that it gets weirder from there. But yeah, it's a really good Switch game. I do think this is like a great, if you've got a few minutes to kill, it's a good Switch, I'm gonna go get some fish and come back type of situation. Sort of feels that like Animal Crossing quick bite gameplay, but I also don't know if I'm playing the game wrong by doing that, because that again goes back to I haven't seen that secondary hook that they presumably have somewhere. So it's been a fun time getting used to it, but I think I'll give it like another 2 hours. But if it hasn't hooked me by then I don't know. Dredge is not grabbing me the way that I thought it would.
I need you all to applaud my restraint. My finger has been hovering over the button.
I left it right
tis.
there for you, Alex.
There were so many times that I could have.
Get it hooked? It's a fishing game. Ha ha. All right.
There was that. There were things there were things with you guys saying depth and surface level. Oh my god!
Oh yeah. And there is like another layer to this that is basically like the Pokemon fun of collecting things, because there is like a whole index of fish that you collect, And there's fun stuff, like you can get a manta ray that has like shards of crystal just stuck throughout it, which is an interesting thing, but I also just have no control over that. Like there's not really an ability to hunt for that thing, because I just kind of have to look for the spot that looks shiny and go to it, which as of right now is just generally very easy. So yeah, I don't know if there'll be more to it at some point, but as of right now, I think I've hit the limit of like the complexity that I've been exposed to in it so far. So I'm hoping for more. All right, who's got something?
I'll go next. I'll go for it, Alex.
I was gonna say I've gone through a series of games. Unfortunately, the most Halloweeny of which I haven't played, but I was watching a bunch of other friends play. I'll start with that one because it's the one I haven't mentioned at all before. Lethal Company, which
Ooh.
is it's an interesting mix between sort of like Phasmophobia and Deep Rock Galactic.
Ooh.
In terms of Moon's haunted, but your soul belongs to the company. Meet your quota, or we'll leave you in the vacuum of space.
Well, Alex, I just want to. There is some weird AI stuff going on right now. I don't know what it is, but as you said that, I was like, I'm going to go add this to my Steam wish list because it sounds interesting. Pull up Steam, and the first thing on the screen is Lethal Company. I have never looked at this game before. I don't know anything about it.
It's also only $10.
It is cheap, yeah.
Yeah, and it has that very crunchy sort of PS1 aesthetic with the video filter over it as well. Yeah, it's mainly resource gathering, things like that. More running away from spooky threats than fighting them, as far as I saw. Now with my limited time watching other people play through it, but it does look interesting. I think I might give it a try at some point over another weekend.
Mm-hmm.
There was that. And then there was checking back up on Signalis again, because the game got some updates with some more content.
Did get an update.
And new rooms, new lore, new story stuff, new characters to interact with too. That's fun. That are mainly lore things. One of the replicants that's actually not corrupted somehow in the setting. No new endings as far as I could tell, and I also
they made the change that
finished.
We talked about a bunch of times in our Signalis episode, where we were like, it would be great if the modules were not slot taking.
Yes, the flashlight no longer takes up an inventory spot, which is amazing. Yeah, there's a place where you can get it upgraded and fixed.
If you want, you can even change it to classic so that it does take up an inventory slot. they literally did everything so that everybody can be happy, basically. Even though I also agree that should change.
Mm-hmm. But it's nice that it's there.
Yeah, no new endings as far as I could tell, and I still haven't completed the secret ending yet. Because my god, it's hard to keep track of that stuff. Yeah, especially with the very beginning thing, making sure you don't miss any of it. Ugh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, can you do the secret ending on the new more slots mode? Because it would make it a lot easier.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Might be worth going back to try it. Yeah, you were talking about the Lethal Company, Alex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all love Signalis very much.
We also did do like an entire 2.5 hour episode on just Signalis. If you'd like to listen to that, you can go there.
Yeah, I am a fan of plugging our stuff. It was the revisiting of Signalis, mostly what I've watched so far of people playing Lethal Company that makes me want to try it out. And then also, as far as not Halloweeny but fall vibes go, I don't know if you'd agree with this, Brett, but I'd classify Jusant as very fall-esque.
You're stretching it. You're stretching it. I'm being honest. You're stretching it. Because I've been playing Jusant as well. You're stretching it. It's comfy.
Like a rope.
Yeah, to me, it very much feels like it's it's that comfy, mellow sort of feel that is synonymous with fall in my mind.
But it's in a desert, and it has to do with like the rain and beaches and whales and things. And I don't know. It has the possibility to evoke the same comfy feelings that perhaps a more autumnal game would, but it's too summery.
You can. There's another game that I completely forgot that I wanted to play, which was Seasons: A Letter from the Future, I think.
Oh
Checking
yeah,
out.
the one with the
Yeah.
camera photography game.
I had that on my list, but I didn't get to it.
Yeah, that's been on my list for ages, but I haven't been able to play it yet. I've heard it was very good. I've heard a lot of positive things about that game. Which does, I think that one does fit the fall vibes more than Jusant does. Like, I guess maybe Jusant's color palette is...
Color palette, even with the warm summer stuff, it has that all very pastel feel to it with its stylized graphics.
Yeah. Very exciting. So what was the... I think you said you had one more that you were actually playing that was... Just was that Jusant?
That was Jusant.
Not in the horror game
course,
mood this October, no. Alex.
And then of course Baldur's Gate and its scary bits.
Yeah.
Which I can't go into right now because spoiler things. But
because I was gonna say you can talk about just specific scary moments from a game. Like I remember I talked about a specific bit from Dead Space a couple years ago. It was just that like one specific part.
But I accidentally turned Will into a screaming mountain of flesh.
You know, that's pretty scary.
That's pretty scary.
That's a
I don't even know who that character is, but that sounds scary.
He's a cool character. Neat guy. Maybe a mound of flesh.
Would you say he deserved better than becoming a giant mound of screaming flesh?
I probably. I still need him to help rescue his father.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in Baldur's Gate.
Yeah. There's so much going on, and in Act 3 there are so many bugs. I've tried to reload several times to try to complete Gale's quest, but he keeps disappearing from my camp.
Oh no.
Alright. Well, Wyatt.
Yeah.
I didn't go through all of my Halloween stuff just with Dredge. I have been playing 2 other games, one of which you're also very familiar with, so I'm going to save that one, because I have a feeling you might want to talk about it when you're doing your stuff.
Okay.
Second game that I've been playing recently is I recently got I say recently, like 2 months ago, and I wasn't able to play it because I was on vacation, a PSVR 2. And wow. PSVR 2 has a game that I think very much would tickle the Wyatt fancy. So I want to make sure...
A VR game tickles my fancy?
A VR game that would tickle your fancy.
We'll see about that.
Called After the Fall. So After the Fall... I don't know if you've heard of this, Wyatt. It's pretty well known. It's by the Arizona Sunshine devs. It is a basically direct port of Left 4 Dead. Not actually, but mechanically it is almost basically just Left 4 Dead into VR. And it is really good.
I mean, I'm liking the words that you're saying right now.
It is very fun because you can play co-op with randoms. It's basically entirely the regular structure of Left 4 Dead. You go out, you get stuff, and then you come back and get to spend stuff on like upgrading weapons and whatnot. But you can go out with solo with your AI buddies, or you can go and actually do multiplayer. I've been playing solo just because I tend to prefer solo in VR stuff when I don't have a way to mute the mic easily. So I think it's been a very good time, and it's a lot more cinematic than I was expecting, which I've really enjoyed, because you get a lot of moments that are like, oh, a giant tentacle monster has come out and is absorbing a highway, and you need to now like break apart its big tentacles to get past it, and it's very fun. Yeah, it's been another very good Halloween themed game, and the threat of, because this game does fully just take the Left 4 Dead archetypes, right? Like it is a basically 1-to-1 port of Left 4 Dead mechanics. Boomers in VR are a different level of terrifying. When one of those things gets up to you and you realize, oh, I don't easily have a way to get out of here, and they can do the thing where like when you're playing Left 4 Dead, it feels a little weird when your whole screen gets covered in goo because you're playing a video game, right? But in VR, and it's actually like you have to, your eyes just get covered in goo.
God.
and you're having to reload guns and aim and whatnot while you're dealing with this.
Oh, that's gross. Yep,
It's
that's not kosher. That's not
it's
kosher.
real scary. It's a real frightening moment. But yeah, it's very enjoyable, especially because it's a little bit more on the action side than survival horror side. So you get your shooting gallery of zombies, basically, which is a very good time.
Yeah.
All right, Wyatt, you were ready to jump in.
I am ready to jump in. First of all, I'm going to take this godforsaken thing off because
Yeah.
that is so annoying. Oh, God.
The other 001 radio classic of slowly dismantling our costumes over the course of the Halloween episode.
Oh, absolutely.
Although I will say, when I wore my Vault Boy costume, I never took that mask off. That was on. As painful as that thing was, it was on, and I do not have that kind of commitment.
Fortitude anymore.
No, not even a little bit.
The only reason I still have mine on is because I have the fan going, because my thermostat is stuck at 85.
Nice.
And this thing is not very breathable.
Sweat all that outline off.
So my plan to cover spooky games this I should say last month has changed quite a bit. The plan that I had changed quite a few times. The original plan was my big thing I wanted to play because I was waiting for specifically October to play. I was like, I'm gonna play Dead Space Remake. That was like my big thing. That was my focus. And then right before I was gonna sit down and actually start playing it, Callisto Protocol became available for free for PlayStation Plus users, and I was like, oh, this will be like a goofy little like compare and contrast, like, you know, see how one game does it and how another game does it. But I ended up just playing Dead Space Remake because I was like, I'm having too much fun with this. I don't want to play something that could potentially
that is trying to be the same, but is markedly worse.
I haven't played, so I can't say, but from everything I've heard it's not great. So that was going to be like the big thing. And then Alan Wake 2 came out, and that kind of took all my time. That kind of sucked all the time that I was going to give Dead Space Remake. I do want to talk about Dead Space Remake a little bit because I think I'm like chapter 3, halfway through chapter 3. It's excellent. It is very, very good. And I will say my memory of the first game, I believe I played it 2 years ago. My memory with, like most things, is a little shaky. So I can't do a great job of comparing the two, the original to the remake, other than some vague memories I have of the first game. But it's really excellent. All they really had to do was just improve the atmosphere with more modern technology, and that was really all they had to do, was just maintain the atmosphere, and literally everything else about the gameplay has aged beautifully. But they decided to go further than that, and this is one of those cases where the things that they add to the remake, I think, are genuinely welcomed additions and just add to the game. And personally, I don't feel the need to go back to the first game anymore, which might be a bit of a hot take, but I think this new version's great. I think the main thing is the entire Ishimura, the entire ship, essentially is explorable now. Because before in the first game, when you go on the tram, you go to a different area of the ship. That was
basically
like
separated levels, but now it's all connected.
It's basically like a fast travel system, which I think was ingenious.
Yeah.
And to encourage you to go back to those older areas, they introduced the security clearance system, which kind of updates as you go through the game. But you basically get a higher security clearance, which means you can open other doors and chests and lockers and stuff that you couldn't have before. So it's a really good way to encourage you to go back to older areas. They also have the intensity director, which basically is kind of like a Left 4 Dead style director, which basically kind of adapts difficulty and also just like atmosphere and sound design depending on like how much ammo you have and how much health you have and that kind of thing. So there's a bit of like randomization to it that's really well done. I think probably the most like controversial change was that Isaac is now fully voiced as he was in Dead Space 2 and Dead Space 3. They got the original voice actor back, which is great because Gunnar Wright does a great job as always. I really like this change personally. I understand the argument for a lot of people why they like silent protagonists and why they like specifically Isaac Clarke being a silent protagonist in the first game. I felt like the first game didn't really utilize the silent protagonist aspect particularly well, and I think having him be voiced in this game only adds to the story and doesn't take away from it, in my opinion. But that's also from the opinion of someone who prefers a voiced protagonist over a silent protagonist to begin with. But
I was gonna say,
overall, I quite like that change.
from what I've heard, it's not like, the second that Isaac Clarke became a voice protagonist, he was cracking wise in the face of cosmic horror every second he
Yeah,
got,
I
which
was
was
I was
a
gonna
good thing
say
about.
as someone who does not mind a silent protagonist, I was like on paper you see like when they make a change like that, it's like, oh god,
Yeah.
what are they gonna make him say? But he doesn't talk all that much, which is fine because
He
that
talks during
kind of
plot relevant
yeah.
stuff.
He'll like deliver info to like characters that he sees or whatever. Like there's one part in the very beginning where you like go back to the ship that you landed on the Ishimura on, and he's like really quickly and like exasperatedly like telling the pilot with the broken ankle that like, this happened, well, we gotta fix this, and we gotta get out of here right fucking now. And she's like, okay. And it's like there's no like, whew, he's right behind me, isn't he? Like, there's no stupid like Marvel
My
dialogue
God.
that doesn't belong in like any sort of serious setting. Like, he's very like
Yeah.
it does not overstay its welcome. I one of the changes with the dialogue that I like the most is that Isaac reacts similarly to how a player might upon like running out of ammo. Where if you bottom out automatically, just go like, kid'll just like scream at the top of his lungs and just like swear.
Well, the best
It's
part
really
too.
funny.
The best part too is when you're continually stomping dead corpses and
Yeah,
you just
yeah.
Oh yeah.
yell swear words. It's the funniest thing, but it like totally fits because that's probably how you're feeling in that moment. You're
That's
probably
the
crushing this like necromorph because he like got the jump on you or something. So it fits
the
perfectly.
the only way to get your aggression out on something like that after you barely survived it.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
Just
I
scream.
mean,
it's really well done, and a lot of his dialogue they try and show his expertise as like a
mechanic, an
miner,
engineer.
as a mechanic, an
Yeah,
engineer
yeah.
in his dialogue, which I thought was really smart.
Yeah.
And like I said, he doesn't really talk much outside of story specific sequences. He really stays silent for most of the game, for most of like the actual gameplay. Thought that was really
So
well done.
I
They
do
also-
want to shout out the 0G segments too,
Oh,
being
yes, they're
so
so
much
much better.
cooler
Yeah.
than they used to be, and
They were
legitimately
really
very fun.
smart. They were really smart about the changes because a lot of the changes they make are taken from other Dead Space games, mostly just
Yeah.
Dead Space 2.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's like the 0G, like the controls are just Dead Space 2 0G controls because they didn't need to change. They were already like really
Mhm.
good the way that they were. And that means a lot of the changes they make already fit in the Dead Space universe because they're not completely going out of their way for certain things
Mhm.
that don't feel very Dead Spacey. It was just a really smartly considered package in terms of how they decide to update a game that many people argue didn't need to be updated in the first place. It's just really, really smartly done.
Yeah, I agree.
Sounds like an
The-
incredible remake.
It's
The thing
great.
is, speaking of games that they really don't need to update at all, I really hope they like touch 2 as little as possible.
Are
Give
they
it
going
the
I'm
to
sure
be
they're
make-
going.
Are they
I'm
gonna
sure
be
they're going to
remaking
want
others?
to. I would be surprised if they didn't want to because I know the Dead Space 1 remake certainly got reviewed very well. I would imagine that probably translated to selling pretty damn well. Um,
Yeah.
but
They
I do the Master Chief Collection and just change the graphics and keep the gameplay the exact same
Mhm.
because nothing about 2 has to change
I mean,
at
listen,
all. in
you
my
want to go
opinion.
back and completely change Dead Space 3 to make it a good game? Hey, go for it. No one's stopping you. You know what I mean? But I think Dead Space 2 I'm more of a Dead Space 2 person than a Dead Space 1 person.
Same.
You don't really have to change that game much at all. Just
You just leave it alone.
I mean, listen, make it look pretty and make it sound pretty, and
Yeah.
leave it at that.
You're basically done. Like that's
basically
it.
done.
Pretty much.
It's just the DS1 remake, DS2 remaster.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And
And then
because
fully new DS3. Just
yeah. Or just go in a different direction after 2. We can just forget that the old 3 even existed.
oh, that's
Yeah,
what I want, right?
Pull,
Yeah.
Yeah.
pull a Dead Space 3 Reborn. You know,
Yeah. Pull a Final Fantasy VII remake.
Or keeping it in theme, Dead Space 3 remorphed.
That's
oh
there you go.
yeah.
There's your marketing buzz line.
This is why we pay this guy the big bucks. This is why we keep him
To
around.
wear a stupid pirate hat. And
Yeah.
Hell
bad
yeah.
Game title
I-
puns.
I do think also, no matter what the state of the Dead Space 1 remake is, you can play the original on all the same platforms that the remake is on, for, I mean, in some cases free if you have Game Pass. I mean, now the remake is also on Game Pass, but the OG has been on Game Pass for, I think, since EA Play was a part of it.
Yeah, a long time.
Which, like, my philosophy for remakes and remasters has become, you can do whatever you want as long as I can still play the original officially. Like, because I'm not someone that shuns emulation or whatever. I could not care less because they're probably not making money off those games anyway if they're old enough to emulate. But I would love to give you money for a good game that I like. So I would rather play it officially and not have to bother setting up a bunch of stuff on my computer.
And I'm,
Is that
I'm
something
willing to
that-
support developers that are willing to take older titles and make sure that they're still accessible and playable.
Yeah, exactly.
Is
Yeah,
that something that
I'm
Naughty
always
Dog
confident.
didn't do? Did they delist The Last of Us and not The Last
I
of
don't
Us?
think so.
and,
I think you can
just
still
No,
make
basic
the
The
old
Last of Us
version of
part?
it.
Okay.
They're
Okay,
both
good.
still available.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
All right. Well, glad to hear you're enjoying Dead Space Remake, Wyatt, whenever you can get around to actually finishing it. I do also just want to mention that the opening sequence of Dead Space Remake is one of my favorite, like, openers of a horror game, I think, ever, next
It's
to,
really
like,
good.
RE4.
Oh?
I think it's super strong.
And
Yeah.
they didn't. I was terrified. Now I'm typically someone who can stomach very vocal protagonists more so than other people. Not to say that it's always good, because it's not. But I feel like I can deal with it a little bit more. I am so happy that when during that intro you come across the cut off their limbs on the wall, he doesn't say anything. He keeps his goddamn mouth shut.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, wow.
Limbs?
That looks like
What
that
does
could be
that
helpful
mean?
for later.
No. Get it out of here. Keep it as is. It's perfect.
Keep the atmosphere intact, please.
And they did. And
Trust your player to have some amount of brain intelligence. Most people do.
And they- and they nailed it. And they absolutely nailed it. I also loved all of the extra attention that they gave to Nicole and kind of fleshing out her character a bit more. That was very appreciated.
All right, Brett, you're smoking in the corner. I can just
I
feel
know I
it.
am.
So
That-
ready.
That is something that I definitely do. So I was in a bit of a conundrum for this episode during its originally scheduled date because I hadn't played anything scary that I hadn't already talked about before. This year, because I moved and have a new roommate now who had not played Silent Hill 2 before. We just finished playing Silent Hill 2. It was like I said, their first time. But I
Best for
already
life.
talked about that. Yeah, I already talked about that. I think 2 years ago, because I think last year I talked about Silent Hill 3. So I was a little concerned as to what I was gonna do, but then the episode got pushed back, and that gave enough time for Lunacid
I'm glad my
to come out.
sickness would allow you some time. To...
Yeah, thank you so much for not only getting sick in the first place, Ryan, but then surviving it to let this episode still happen. Specifically for me.
You're really looking out for us, Ryan.
Yeah, totally wasn't self-interest at all.
Of course. But yeah, I've mentioned it a couple times before. Lunacid, an indie dungeon crawler game, has just come out in full release. It's out of early access. It
Wait,
came
the
out on
1.0's
Halloween.
out?
Yes, the 1.0
The actual
came out on
1.0?
Halloween.
Oh,
It is a
no,
full game with
Brett.
an ending now. I'm so sorry, Ryan, but this game is really, really good. It's super
so
good.
much time this weekend.
It's like totally absorbed me, because we don't really get the genre of game that it is anymore. It's just kind of gone by the wayside in recent years because it's dungeon crawlers nowadays. If they're anything, they're like the old school
They're like
turn-based style dungeon
wizardry
crawler.
or
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Grimrock style first person.
Yeah, like newer things being like Etrian Odyssey or something, where it has that like weird first person layout, but it's like turn based in battles and you gotta map everything. Lunacid is like the PS1 style dungeon crawler, specifically Kingsfield, which is from Software's first
Oh.
game.
Notably
Uh,
with real good combat comparatively.
Comparatively to Kingsfield, yeah. Um, but yeah, it looks low poly. You can put a bunch of different silly filters on it. You can make it. It has specifically a Silent Hill filter that makes everything really pixely and covers everything in fog. Um, it's very much so catering to people that appreciate the old school dungeon crawler look and feel. But it has a whole like a bunch of game design things that you could only get from a game that was made recently and not during like a company's like growing pains of first making games, which in some ways the Kingsfield games do hold up, but they're pretty obscure even within themselves in terms of getting people to enjoy them as someone who's tried Kingsfield before. um but yeah, I feel like a lesser developer that wasn't I think their online name is Akuma Kira. They also did the horror game Lost in Vivo that a lot of people have played semi recently, and apparently is really scary. And I haven't tried it because it seems too scary for me.
Ed Spooky's
Um,
Jump Scare Mansion DLC.
yes, they did help with Spooky Jump Scare Mansion, which is a fucking masterpiece. That game rocks.
Is that what it's actually called? I thought you were kidding.
Yes.
No, yeah.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Is it it's the DLC is Spooky's Jump Scare Mansion HD Renovation. It's called.
Oh
So
my
mansion.
god.
Great.
But that game's really good, and yeah, Lunacid is also obviously with that kind of repertoire. And the reason I'm mentioning it here is that it is definitely it's not it's not scary. I'm not going to shit myself in fear, but it is certainly spooky. Uh, you have
I
the
would
whole entire
argue,
game.
Brett, that is the essence of a Halloween game. It's not necessarily
Yeah,
scary, but spooky.
it's yeah. I mean, you the whole entire game takes place underground. Because if you go to the surface, unprotected, the rays of the moon will, I guess, just kill you. Because
I guess that's Luna acid.
yes, some quirky individual in the time of like suburban households and telephone poles and wires casted a spell on the moon to make it deadly and drove everything back into like the medieval dark ages with like moon magic and stuff.
Already love
Um,
the world building.
Oh,
You
it's
have me.
incredible because you'll be going through like caves and dungeons, and you'll go through a FromSoft classic hidden doorway where you have to just like
Mm.
do the equivalent of just running your hand against the wall until a question mark appears, just mashing X the whole time, and the wall disappears into a room that you can enter. It's just a VHS tape. It's fine. It goes somewhere. Um, but yeah, then you go to places like an abandoned like mausoleum where the soundtrack is just like monks chanting, and there's a bunch of corpses with their faces ripped out, not because their faces were ripped off externally, but because their brains escaped.
I'm
So
sorry, what?
it's spooky. They get the vibes down,
Which
which I
is
guess
so
is why.
which is wild because the title card looks like it's a Metroidvania.
It does a little bit, yeah, and it has that same why I tend to like this like modern reimagining of dungeon crawlers is that they have those like Metroidvania sensibilities where you'll like explore through a whole area that was interconnected with like the last three, and you'll come upon a door that looked really weird and needed like it was covered in green things and it has a hole in it, and you come back to it and you have the green object that fits into the hole in the green door, and you open it and you realize that it
Of
just
course.
attached back to an area that you were in like 4 hours ago or something. It's very interconnected in its world design.
Oh, love seeing the interconnectedness. That's one of the reasons why I stick around and torture myself with Souls likes.
Yeah. They definitely took, because FromSoft has always been like that with their like fully explorable games that aren't just level based, and they definitely took that.
This door can't be opened on this side.
Exactly.
Thank you, Liza P.
And they made the. I wanted to be upset at this decision, but I think I've ended up liking it more than I thought it would, more than I thought I would. There's no map at all, and there's like barely any signposting, like even like game design signposting, where there'll be like a hallway that leads to this bit or whatever, or like the brightly colored area, like this is where you have to go. It's very like just use all your tools and look everywhere and like inspect everything very like thoroughly and everything on your own. And for a while, I was like, I've run out of places to go. I'm a little lost. I don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't want to just drop this. So I guess I'll look up what other people have done. People have lovingly made their maps by themselves in MS Paint, and it's beautiful.
Of course, they have.
Because
Yes.
there's something about going through like just an impossibly dense underground cave system, looking at not one but 2 or 3 sets of maps of the same area by different people, because none of them are good enough on their own.
Oh no.
So there's just something extra adventurer-y about that, where I just have to like triple check everything. It's like, well, this is a curve here, but then someone else says it's not, and I feel like that might be part of the point, because it's cool to see people come together to have made these like really complex, like just basically 2D reimaginings of a 3D space that can't be easily translated.
I can see how that could
works.
really easily, like really well blend into the feeling of the world itself, because like you were talking about,
Exactly.
pushing people back to the dark ages technology wise, or something along that. It's like you don't have like geo satellites or anything giving you accurate recreations of what the area looks like. You're gonna have to deal with people that are unreliable narrators in terms of how maps go.
It's one of those really cool things that I think games that are made nowadays can really like utilize, is the idea of like, you can have a game that gives you so little information. Like, we're not going to give you a map. We're not going to give you waypoints or whatever. And it kind of relies on community members to help each other out. And you just create this really tightly knit community that way, of like people who are trying to help each other solve mysteries, or people who are just posting what they found. And you can create such a loyal like fan base just through how little information you can give your players sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's like a best of both worlds scenario, where for like the people that just want to put their head down and figure out everything by themselves will be able to do that. But also the people that like the kind of like community, like, hey, I found this thing. I don't know what this does. Has anybody else found this before? And then it sparks a whole new like thread of people who haven't seen that before and are figuring it out together. Like that can also happen. It's very cool to see that in a game made by just one person over the course of like a couple of years. It's freaking crazy. Yeah.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, it's super cool. I'm very much looking forward to play more of it now that it's actually officially out.
It's so it's very polished too, which is surprising, because again, it's just one person. But I don't know. Something about these games that aren't 250 gigabytes and they're just like a small 2-second download really appear to be running quite smoothly if they're developed with enough love, I guess.
You have to have all of these uncompressed sound files clogging up your SSD. How dare you?
No, you don't understand it. BT needs to sound that way.
Oh, God.
Or you compress them and you end up with Assassin's Creed Valhalla's horrendous sound mixing. But
and yet you still have a large install size.
It's still
For
too
other
big.
mysterious reasons.
Well, we get away from the horror of file sizes. Get back to
the true horror here.
The horror of video games.
Obviously, I do have some more mentions that are also, not played, but spent a significant amount of time watching and seeing stuff and things popping up on my dash and things like that.
I love that you've been vicariously living your Halloween video games, Alex. It's a good way to
Yeah.
avoid getting jump scared yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm. I can get scared at jump scares, but I'm more scared. But I usually get more annoyed at them, while still being outwardly scared and shitting my pants.
Oh,
No,
do I
it's
have
like,
the game for
"Oh,
you, Alex? When
There-
you're
oh,
done
that
talking
didn't-
about your stuff, I have a game for you. You're gonna hate it.
that didn't deserve to soil me. Um, but anyway, the two others that I wanted to bring up were, you guys remember Dusk,
Oh yeah.
Yes, I love
that fun boomer shooter?
Dusk is
The
sick.
Dusk is
deve-
amazing.
The developer made a demake,
Yes, I saw.
so it's very not it's very like
Like early DOS
original
game.
Atari or DOS
Yeah.
Oh
style
my god, I love
graphics,
that.
and it completely changed genres too. Like, it's still like the kind of creepy stuff, I guess, but it's more of a puzzle game now with how you have to lay out your actions. Which the original one like was a bit of a puzzle game, with managing resources and your speed and flow and things like that. But this one definitely gets it more into a turn-based
Oh my god,
flat
this is
2D
great.
style, which is really cool. Yeah. That,
Oh.
and then another really fun one where I love interesting ways that games can include peripherals and things like that. This is another one of those horror games that uses your microphone. That's
Of
also
course it does.
it's interestingly streamer bait of
Yeah.
a game, considering that so the game is called Don't Scream.
This is the game that I was going to talk about.
game?
That you would
dude.
hate.
Which yeah, it's the entire thing is like jump scares and ambiance to try to get you to scream. But like the whole thing about like the strange streamer bait bit is, streamers usually like to talk while they're playing a game. The whole thing with this is hooking up your microphone. It counts talking as like, making noise and screaming.
Yeah, like any input into the microphone.
Yeah. So like streamers are silent while they're playing this game, and they're just trying to emote with their face if they have a camera on.
It's like anti-streamer bait.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
pretty funny.
But so the from my understanding, you could also feel free to fill in anything that I've most likely missed in my explanation, Brett. But so you're just dropped into this like forest area. It's very sort of Slenderman-esque, but there's better graphics than the low poly trees and things like that. And you're given it's a 15-minute timer, is that right?
18 minutes.
18 minutes.
For some reason.
Through which every time you stop moving, the timer stops as well. You have to be
time only
moving
moves
for
when you
a
move.
whole of 18 minutes and just exploring and experiencing the space. And there are just jump scares and a horrifying ambiance that follow you and get worse and worse as time goes on, and get either better or worse depending on your area. Oh, it's so creepy. Holy shit.
Boy, does it get worse over time.
Oh,
Alex.
no.
So I was keeping a semi close eye on the game because the concept sounds cool. Like that sounds like we can do this now. And not only can we do this now, visually the game looks like awesome. Just like the like camcorder filter they have over everything like actually looks like vaguely realistic in a very interesting way. It's kind of like
being the awful flashlight mechanic.
It's it kind of looks like that. There was like an Unreal 5 video that someone made. I think over the summer where it people were confusing it for like real like body
Oh my
cam
God.
footage for like a SWAT team raiding a place, but they were playing a first person game that was meant to
Oh wow.
evoke that exact thing. So it reminds me of that visual like style. I'm gonna be honest, I think the game completely fails at what it's set out to do. Because
that's an
for the first
unfortunate thing to fail.
okay, because think about it. we already realized one of the problems is that it's streamer bait because if you make a loud noise, then something bad happens. Well, if you make a noise that goes over the mic threshold that is visibly represented in the bottom right corner of your screen by a little bar with a line in it, if the noise bar goes over that line, you just die. Your character falls over and it says you screamed and you have to start over. Nothing
There's no jump scare getting at
interesting
you, like,
happens.
Freddy Fazbear or Huggy
It's
Wuggy, they're gonna eat you. You just collapse.
So there are two problems with this. We'll call it 2.5 problems because one of the problems is actually two problems in and of itself. One of them is that I can't speak or make any noises above this volume, so I either have to remain completely silent, which is not a good idea for making content. Which you could be playing this game alone with friends, that's most people playing this will probably do it that way. But watching Vinny on Vinesauce play it,
Of course.
his idea instead was to continue talking like normal, just whispering very quietly. Neither of which is conducive to good content creation at all. It was really funny just trying to just watching him try to keep under the volume level, and then he did one slightly too loud Peter Griffin impression, and his character just had a heart attack, fell over, and died. And he was just like, "I can't believe Peter Griffin killed me." It was really funny, but it's
the best way he could have died.
Exactly, but it's at the game's expense.
Yeah,
and
that's
the
funny
other,
and not scary.
Exactly. It's funny. It's not scary, and that's the other solitary main problem that I have with this is that the design of the game, where if you make a noise loud enough, you die and have to start over, and so you have to last for 18 minutes. You have to ask yourself, last 18 minutes in what? In what sort of environment? Will it be an expertly crafted, atmospherically scary zone that's like a level I have to get through where there's a constant threat of death and there's things around it that won't immediately affect me gameplay wise, but will make me, get scared naturally and elicit something that could be, like a whimper, like a shriek or something like that? Or will it just be walking around an empty, dark supermarket with literally gifs jumping at you? And it is the second option. And I think at the end of Vinny's successful playthrough of the full 18 minutes, because the game keeps a stat sheet at the end, he survived 51 jump scares. I don't think there are 51 jump scares in most 2-hour long horror movies that people say there are jump scare problems in. And so after a while, what happens is they just start becoming really funny. You'll just be walking through, there'll be nothing in front of you.
So it becomes a try not to laugh game.
Exactly. That's exactly what he said.
Oh, no.
That's exactly what I've seen other people say too. Is that it goes from being a try not to scream game to a try not to laugh game? Because just imagine you're there's just an open room of darkness in front of you. There's no objects for anything to jump out from, but in the center of your vision, a GIF plays of a white monster jumping over a nothing and lunging at you and screaming. There's just no rhyme or reason for any of the things. It's just okay, well here's the scary nun lady from horror movie circa 2013, and she's gonna scream at you and then teleport away. Here's a bunch of crows that are gonna fall dead in front of you. It's so nothing.
I wonder if the proper application for something like this, because it's a cool idea in theory.
It is.
Because I'm imagining something like take for example Alien Isolation, where you can hide in lockers or under beds and stuff. If you restrict can't say anything through your microphone, you restrict it to really specific moments where you're trying to be quiet in a
exactly.
Very, it's oh, I'm in the locker, and there's even a mechanic in Alien Isolation where you have to hold your breath to make sure that the xenomorph doesn't hear you. If it's something like that where it's oh, I'm hiding in a locker, I can't make any noises, and that would also make for a better streamer bait experience.
Exactly.
Because they're talking, they have to make sure there's no dead air. They got to have a good show going, and all of a sudden they have to be quiet, and it like jumps up on you. That's almost like the jump scare in and of itself, so that you can't talk.
Exactly. Yeah.
I
Because that's
I,
like the rest of Alien Isolation as a game too is just full of like such expertly crafted tension. Like that's something that game does like extremely expertly well, just because the alien is such a threat,
Mhm.
and there's just none of that at all. And Don't Scream, and so it just becomes really funny.
I don't know why, but the second you mentioned like poorly rendered GIF, the first like image that popped into my head was the pic. I have a warped, twisted, horrible mind. Was
We know.
We know, Alex. We know.
the corner in the Blair Witch movie?
Yes.
It's the corner, but it's 3D Skelton sitting in it from Smiling Faces.
3D Squelton hates corners.
Boo!
God.
All right. Well, was that the end of your Don't Scream rant, Brett?
Yeah, I didn't even plan to have that.
Could
but
you
there
say
we
it's
go.
makes you want to scream
Oh,
a little bit?
It makes me want to laugh. Is what it makes me want to do. The devs have said, I don't know if they're like doing any sort of damage control because I kind of stopped caring. But they did say it's because it's just a demo, just a free demo, right? So they're gonna keep cracking at it and updating it and stuff. And I do, cause we've said a million times, it is a cool idea. I hope they make it into something that is good. But right now, it's just really funny. So I don't know. Whatever happens, happens. I guess.
Yeah, maybe that's enough. But these games are always weird because it's like
Mhm.
if it's streamer bait, just streamers buying your game isn't enough people. Like it's not
Yeah.
a significant enough audience. So there has to be something there for regular people, and it sounds like
Mhm.
maybe that's missing here. Um,
Definitely.
all right. Well, I think we've hit the barrel of most of our Halloween games.
how dare you? How dare
Aside,
you?
Wyatt, I was getting to you. All right.
How dare you?
I was getting to you. Now, before you jump into the game that I know you want to talk about, I do want to mention one other game first, and it's going to be brief because we're going to talk about this game again. Spider-Man 2. Now, playing this, I don't know why I didn't expect this, because it's releasing around Halloween and it has Venom in it. So I should have expected it to be a little bit more Halloween-y than the prior Spider-Mans. This game's a full-on, like, you could take this as a Halloween game for sure.
Oh.
That's pretty
Yeah.
sick.
Yeah.
There's some of the I don't know how far you are in the story, but some of the Mary Jane sections get actually kind of scary.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think there's like one that was, I think, the one I most recently played that really got to me at a point. I was like, this seems like a bad idea, but I understand why we're doing it. Yeah, it's a really fun game that I think it fills that Halloween action thing, because their treatment of Venom is very interesting, and I think it's very cool. We're gonna do a whole episode on this as well. So
we better. If we don't, I'm gonna be angry.
oh, it's probably gonna be like the one after the Game Pass episode we're doing, I think.
Good,
next,
good.
because I'm blazing through it, Wyatt.
I have a lot to say.
I'm getting real up there, and I think I'm the last one that needs to finish it for us to do that episode. So we're very close to being able to do it. But yeah, I just wanted to mention it because I think it really has surprised me with the tone of the game being so like almost scary at moments in a way that is actually pretty like emotionally affecting. So you're like, man, this is hitting. It's hitting the notes that it needs to hit. Which it shouldn't have surprised me, because Spider-Man 1 was really good at that as well. Of like all the Doc Ock stuff really landed emotionally, I think, for most people that play that game. And the same thing is happening in Spider-Man 2. And yeah, they really sold me on everything that's happening in the game, and I'm very excited to finish it. But I wanted to give it a shout out here before we do the actual episode, because I do think it fits the sort of Halloween vibe, and it's what tore me away from Dredge. To be fully honest, that is why I have not played more Dredge.
Any game to do it, that's a
Spider-Man 2 is the reason.
Pick, yeah.
All right, unleash your rant, Wyatt.
So I played Alan Wake 2, and much like Brett, I am actually quite thankful that this episode was delayed by a week because it literally I started playing the game the day that we were supposed to originally film this episode. So I was like, "Oh, I'm basically going to like play it for a bit and then like briefly mention that I played it." But no, I got the whole week to play it. I have not finished it
Nice.
yet because I've been taking it slowly. I don't want to, burst right through it or anything. Um I I really I don't even know where to start. I really like this game. I think there's a couple of missed opportunities that I think would have really like it's been in already, it's in like game of the year talks. I don't know if it's quite there for me, and I'll get into why without spoiling anything. But um Alan Wake 2, sequel to the first game that came out 2010, and is also Remedy's next step in trying to connect all of their games together. Um, they do it, although it's interesting because they do it in some really cheeky ways because some of their past games aren't like technically owned by them. Like I think Rockstar and Take Two own Max Payne at this point, so they can't really use Max Payne. And Quantum Break was also, I think it was like a Microsoft game. So I think technically speaking, Microsoft owned the Quantum Break license. Not that they're probably gonna do anything with it, but is what it is. But they
They have a
reference
new
those two
story, though.
games. Yeah. Well, but they reference those two games in really cheeky ways. One of them is kind of a spoiler that I don't want to talk about, but another one is right in the trailer. But before I get into that, I'm getting ahead of myself. Sorry, I'm like trying to organize all my thoughts here. I'm just so excited. I think it's really interesting the evolution from the first game to the second game because the first game was definitely it had some survival horror elements to it, but it was definitely leaning more towards an action game than like a straight up survival horror game. This, which I feel like kind of at the detriment of the game at some points because it couldn't quite decide if it wanted to be slower, kind of like horror combat or like actiony combat, couldn't quite decide. But this second game is very much a survival horror game. Like a lot more of the DNA of like Resident Evil, for instance, is definitely there. Um, to a point where I can kind of understand why a lot of people who like the first game would bounce off of this. Um, I remember watching a review for someone who's like, I just want to shoot things. Like, why is there so much time spent not shooting things? And it's like, well, yeah, it's a survival horror game, my guy. I don't really know what.
Oh, we've come so far since G4, and yet somehow we are still the same.
um, but no, I'll give the basic rundown of the story. Again, I don't really want to spoil anything. Due to the events of the first game, Max Payne is stuck in the dark place. By the way, if you haven't played the first game and all this is gobbledygook to you, I'm really sorry.
Did you mean Max Payne or Alan Wake?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
That's terrifying. I don't like the way that you answered that.
No, that was me trying. No, that was me trying to save face. No, I totally meant to say Alan Wake. Alan Wake.
I wanted to make
I
sure
would've
there
believed
wasn't
you.
like that's the thing. Like the way that you set that up, I would fully have believed that. So I just wanted to make sure.
How interesting.
Due to the
I
events.
can't believe this guy.
To the events of the first game, he's stuck in the dark place. 13 years has passed, which is also the amount of time between the first game and the second game, which is kind of spooky. You get two FBI agents that are discovering that are basically looking into a series of murders from this weird forest cult that it takes place in the same location as the first game. And then at the same time, you have Alan Wake who's trying to escape this dark, evil place. It switches between the two, like chapter to chapter. And then what's really interesting is I want to say like maybe just before halfway through the game, they give you the option to switch between the two freely, which is kind of an interesting,
That's cool.
interesting idea.
oh, so we got it's like the Game Pass game that you picked out a while back. The oh my god.
Right. At the Broken Age.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. I don't want to say much more than that without spoiling things. What I will say about the story, and this is one of the things that I'm kind of iffy about, is it's very plot driven and less character driven, which is not typically the kind of story that I really get into. For me, I really need like strong characters with good arcs that kind of grounds me into the story, because I feel like for me, if you have really really strong characters that you feel some kind of connection to, that makes the plot relevant to me in some way, because like you could have a plot that's going on in the background, but if there's no characters to ground me into that plot, I'm not really going to care about what's going on. I would say that this one is still enjoyable because the plot itself is very cerebral. There's a lot of really interesting things going on that don't they present a lot of things that don't really make sense until later on. So it does keep you guessing. And for someone like me that's very character driven instead of plot driven, I have been kind of interested to see where it goes. But I do think that interest is starting to wane a little bit because again, these characters are not they're not explored all that much, which is especially odd given how they focus on this concept called the mind place. For Saga, it's basically it's like an interactive menu. You hit tab if you're on PC, and it instantly switches you into this room where you can do a variety of different things. Where the main headline thing is, oh, as you're going through this adventure, this story, you're taking pictures of things, you're like writing down notes and stuff like that. You go to your mind place and you go to your evidence board and you're pitting up all these pictures, you're like writing down little notes and you're tying them together with the string and everything, and you're trying to piece together what's going on. And you spend so much time in this mind place. You spend so much time in the minds of the main characters, but you don't really learn that much about them, which I felt like was such a huge wasted opportunity because it's such a psychological experience. The fact that you're not really getting much out of these characters was kind of disappointing. But it is a really cool world, and it's a really cool system that that mind place, because it's there's been a lot of confusion on it too. A lot of people are like, well, this is clearly supposed to be a detective game. I can't the game kind of makes these deductions for you, and it doesn't like there's no way to like solve the case incorrectly or anything. And
You can't force yourself to fail. Basically.
yeah, and my response to that is that that's not really what it's about. It's more of a way to help you to help kind of piece together what's going on. It's more of like an interactive like quest log more so than anything.
Reminds me of because I was watching you play this for the first like 2.5 hours or so. It reminds me a lot of Outer Wilds. How Outer Wilds had like that flowchart board that would get automatically filled in as you played the game, and like it wouldn't tell you what to do next, but you could kind of draw conclusions based on what you'd already done and see like what leads you hadn't followed up on and stuff. And it was a good way to organize it without making it super tedious for the player to like actually deal with.
Yeah, it was, and I think the system for it, like the way they've designed their menus and everything, and their UX is really well done. I think it's understandably people maybe thought it was going to be more of a detective game than it actually was, and I totally understand that. But I think
I don't feel like they ever build it as that though. Like
not really. I think for a lot of people, they may have seen it as like, oh, you play as an FBI agent, and there's a thing where you tie the strings to the pictures, and so they just kind of put two and two.
They jump to conclusions.
Yeah, but they never. But Remedy never really made that claim at all. I think their explanation of it was fairly straightforward. But it's a cool system. And it makes you feel like a detective without.
You really feel like a detective.
Yeah.
Really feel like Batman over there.
I really feel like a pirate right now. Let me tell you. But no, it's a cool system, and it kind of gets you in that detective-y mood without fully committing to it, which makes me sound like I'm insulting it, but I'm actually not. I think they got the balance.
The balance.
Yeah, no, I think it's well done. There are some things about the mind place that are kind of odd. One of the things I do like is that they Remedy is well known for this point at having really goofy live action like television ads and episodes of things as like collectibles. And there's a way to replay all of those in the mind place, which is kind of fun. There's a whole side story about like a radio show host, like an old radio show host, who is like slowly losing his touch with reality in the town, and you kind of see the progression of that through these like radio broadcasts. It's really funny. It's really, really funny. But there's some other weird things in it that I don't quite understand. So one of them is you pick up for Saga Anderson, at least, you pick up these things called manuscripts or manuscript scraps that you find in lunchboxes. It's a whole thing. It makes perfect sense if you play the game.
I love that, Wyatt. I love the lead in of you pick up manuscripts, and it makes perfect sense when you play the game.
It makes perfect sense. I don't know. Partially, it's a spoiler, and I don't really want to say anything about it. But
Gotcha.
But basically, it's like a collectible resource. They're like scraps of manuscripts, and then you use those to upgrade your guns in your head. It really doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's like, oh, if you find 15 scraps of page scraps, you can increase the capacity in your magazine, or you can fire 2 crossbow bolts instead of 1 before having to reload. It's very odd. I get that this is kind of a survival horror thing,
They wanted
but
upgrades.
the mental justification for it and how it works with this mind place makes
Yeah.
no fucking sense. It's very strange.
It feels
I'm
very
sure,
evil
like,
within.
Yeah. I'm sure,
Uh-huh.
like, mechanically it feels like just like any other fine upgrade system when you like use the stuff or whatever through the progression of the game. But it does kind of feel like we really are in the year of our Lord 2023, and we do just have to put little bits of RPG elements into literally fucking everything because
I
it's
don't know. That's a
2023
pretty
now.
traditional action horror thing of like even the
But there's a
older
lot that
games had that
don't.
stuff.
I think with the way that they have this world set up, there are so many ways that they could have justified it. Because essentially, the entire and this isn't really a spoiler because you kind of figure it out early on, but a lot of the events in the game are being written by Alan Wake or his like
Mhm.
evil
Hmm.
like double Mr. Scratch, right? And so you could totally have it where it's like, oh, Alan just kind of writes weapons and upgrades into the story to help
That would make a
like
lot more
Anderson.
sense.
Yeah.
And like maybe that's what they were going for. It's like, oh, you find scraps of a page that then gets this upgrade, but it's a little tenuous. It's a little tenuous.
I think everything should just use the RE4 remake solution and the original RE4 solution of just having a weird vendor with purple stuff around him that goes hey and sells you.
I would just rather have a guy.
Just a guy.
Yeah.
And you can go down in his basement and he has a shooting gallery for you to play.
Yeah.
um, but no, it's a really cool idea, and I hope that it's something that they carry into the future because it's a great idea that I think could be molded to a lot of different games that can do a lot of really unique things. One thing that really bothers me is that this game is being labeled as a walking simulator, and I pull my hair out every single time. It's like I can't even like. Yes, there are a lot of moments where you're walking from point A to point B, and not a lot of things are happening. But in a horror game, that's kind of like, how common is it that you walk into entire rooms in Dead Space and not fight anything?
Yeah.
It's just about atmosphere and like the
Mhm.
worry that something could attack you at any moment. It's building
And if
tension.
the atmosphere is good, then that's fine. It's not a
Exactly.
complaint.
Exactly. They do a lot of the atmosphere, especially for Saga's sections, are very heavily reliant on the sound design, right? There's a segment where you're in a this like this like small town amusement park, right? At night. And the Ferris wheel is going off, and you can hear like the really kind of creepy fair music coming from the Ferris wheel. But they also do this really ingenious thing where the Ferris wheel creaks under its own weight because it's not built
Oh
particularly
boy.
well.
Ugh,
But the creaks also kind of sound like the enemies you fight in the game. So you're never
that's
quite sure
cool.
Oh,
if you're hearing
Mhm.
creaks or
fun.
if you're hearing. They also do like classic like a lot of your time as Saga is spent in the woods. You might hear like a twig snap or something, and it's not really there's nothing attacking you but a twig snaps, and it just makes you feel like you're being watched the whole time. It's really
You're always
well
on
done.
edge.
Oh.
Yeah,
Mm.
super well done. Um, yeah, it's and then combat too. I feel like maybe is a little on the simpler side, and there isn't as much combat as one might expect. Like there's I would say there's significantly less combat in here than there is in like Dead Space remake. And you're never fighting more than 1 or 2 enemies at a time. I think the most I've seen is like 3, but that's really
Yeah, it's
about it.
not an RE4 if you're taking on a whole like
Yeah,
town of people.
it's not like that at all. But it's also it is interestingly balanced because you're never fighting more than 1 or 2 enemies at a time, which is fine because of the relatively slow move speed of your main character. But you're also never you can skip fights if you want to. I'm playing on normal difficulty, and there's never been a moment where I had to skip a fight because I was low on resources. They keep you fairly well stocked. which I know for some people, like having very tight, limited ammo kind of adds to the experience. For me, I appreciate something a little bit more lenient. I wouldn't say they like overwhelm you with ammunition or anything. It feels like The Last of Us, where like you never completely run out of ammo, but it's like just in that sweet spot where like you still have to be really conservative with your
You get the
ammunition.
feeling of like using up resources, but you don't get the annoyance of
Exactly.
Yeah,
having
yeah.
to actually
Which is
restock.
which for me is like that's the sweet spot that I like
Mhm.
personally.
Yeah, it's
'Cause you
it's
still get
similar
that feeling
to
without
original Dead Space 1 and Silent
Yeah.
Hill 2 in that regard.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
most Resident Evil games aim for that same space.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's I would say it's pretty well balanced in that area. The mechanic of fighting enemies kind of remains the same from the first game. They're shrouded in darkness, and you have to use your flashlight to like burn this like darkness shield that they have essentially, and you have to reload that using batteries and stuff, and then your weapons deal a lot more damage. It's still a compelling mechanic. It's done a little bit differently here, just because it's more survival horror-y than the first game. Because the first game, you didn't even have a crosshair. You just your crosshair was your
Yeah.
flashlight, and it was a cool idea. I found it kind of awkward, but it was a neat idea. Here it's just you have a crosshair, and your flashlight just follows your crosshair like that. Personally, I prefer this. Uh, let's see. God, again, I like my brain is going all over the place here. And then the Alan Wake sections are super neat too, because that one leans way more into the atmosphere. There's even less combat, but the way they deal with enemies is super interesting. They all of the enemies in the game are like shadows, right? And like they're even less definable than the enemies in Saga's section. The cool thing is they'll like lay out a bunch of enemies in an area, but not all of them will attack you. They'll like say your name in a really creepy way and like walk up to you, but if you train your flashlight on them long enough, they just like disappear. And so you're not quite sure which ones are actually going to attack you and which ones are
That's
just going to walk up to you
interesting.
and disappear. It's
Cool.
really creepy. And again, they just like say your name, or they'll say random lines of dialogue that may or may not mean something. It's really well done. His sections take place in like a really creepy, twisted, like detective noir version of New York, and there's tons of graffiti everywhere. And
Very cool.
you're writing down, and you're seeing all these bits of graffiti that like mean certain things, especially if you know the lore of the first game. Super interesting. And I'm rambling, by the way. I'm so sorry. His version
It's
of the
fine.
mind place, his version of the mind place is super interesting because he has what's called a plot board. Um, because his goal is I'm stuck in this dark place, in this like evil place, and the only way to escape it is by writing a story in which I escape it. And so as you're playing the game, you're also writing the story at the same time. And so what happens is you're stuck in an abandoned subway, right? Couple stations connected by like a collapsed tunnel, that kind of thing. And what's cool is you're coming across certain areas that you find important, and you write it down on your plot board. And then you also come across plot points, which are things like, oh, evil murder cult, missing FBI agent, and that kind of thing. And the idea is that you're mixing and matching these scenes to different plot points, so that you're basically rewriting the entire area around you that has different outcomes and different places you can go. So it's like,
Super
oh,
cool.
it's super cool. So it's like, oh, if I do the murder cult plot point in this room, and if I do the missing FBI agent in this room, that'll allow me to access new areas and also figure out what's going on. It kind of unravels the larger story more. Super cool stuff.
That is
And
sick, yeah.
and the coolest bit of presentation that kind of ties all this stuff together is how they combine in-game footage with live action footage, because all of the characters in the game look like they're actors, and that's look like they're voice actors, and that's because they also filmed them in live action sequences, which is super interesting. Um, so like during there's a whole thing that Saga can do where she can profile a character to kind of try and learn more about their motivations, and as they're talking, it's flashing in and out of live action footage of these characters as they're talking to you.
Oh, that's
It's like
sick.
it's so cool. Um, and they use that really really well. There's moments where there's a character that you're following that's like a detective who's heavily implied to be Max Payne, for various reasons, but they can't call him Max Payne. It's
Huh.
super weird.
Is his name Jax?
No,
Sane?
it's even weirder.
Jackson.
It's even weirder than that, because in the first game, or I guess in general, Alex Wake became a popular writer because he wrote a series of detective novels about someone named Alex Casey. That was his like big break in the writing world. And then in the second game, Saga Anderson's cop partner is a cop also named Alex Casey, just out of nowhere, completely random. Also, his appearance, the person they used for his appearance is Sam Lake, who's the writer and director, one of the leads at Remedy, who was also, his likeness was also used for Max Payne 1.
Yeah.
And the voice
That's
actor
the
for
guy.
Alex Casey is the same voice actor as Max Payne.
That's pretty cool. Does he
So
do
the
the face?
writer, he does the face.
Okay,
Yes.
so good. There's a whole bit where you're stuck at a late night talk show thing, and it's a whole live action episode of a talk show where Alan Wake comes in and they're interviewing him about this book that he didn't write. And he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, there must have been some sort of mistake. I didn't write this book." And they're like, "Oh, haha, that's so funny." And then they just bring in again, this is so crazy. They bring in Sam Lake, who is supposed to be portraying Alex Casey and also portrayed Max Payne. They bring in the actual actor who portrayed Alex Casey in the movie adaptation of the Alex Casey books, who's just Sam Lake. His name is actually Sam Lake in the game. It's
the fuck?
it's insanity. It's absolute insanity.
They're messing with
but
you, Wyatt.
They are.
It's working.
They are.
Wild.
It's and just like weird, cool stuff like that. It's why it's one of the only like plot-driven stories that I've seen in a while that has like kept me this interested, because the plot is so cerebral and it throws you so many different curveballs. It's super interesting because you basically have Alan Wake, who's trying to write this story and try and give everyone good endings, but you also have his alter ego, Mr. Scratch, who's going into his pages and scratching out certain lines and rewriting them to make sure that like everyone dies, essentially.
Mr. Scratch?
Yeah, because he scratches out parts in the manuscripts and rewrites them.
Just
write out Mr. Scratch.
No, you can't do that though.
It's
because
too
here's
easy.
the thing. You're actually not. You're. That's a joke, but that's actually how it works. You can't just like, if you're writing a story and because the whole thing is like artists and their work is brought to life by this dark place, and so the dark place tries to twist their art into a way that like see, I sound fucking insane right now. I sound like Charlie Day.
You need the board behind you. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
It's really, like, I'm not trying to be condescending. It's really hard to explain. Like,
I believe you. This game sounds like a fever dream while tripping.
It's so
You're
funny
actually
because
selling it to me.
Yeah, everything you're saying is making me more interested.
yeah, because like it's like when I'm playing it's so funny. I'm playing the game, everything makes perfect sense. As soon as I leave and think about it for more than 2 seconds, I'm like,
yeah.
this sounds insane.
It's one of those.
But it's really well done because the game has an internal logic that it carries out throughout the entire game. It sounds insane when you're trying to piece everything together, but it does have an internal logic that it does teach you, and so everything begins to make sense in a really interesting way. It's fantastic.
I can't wait to play this after I finish Control on Alan Wake 1.
Yeah.
Although, interestingly enough, I will say, Remedy have made it very clear, and they've designed Alan Wake 2 in a way where you don't have to play the first game or Control in order to understand what's going on.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but I want to
part
have
of
the
the
moment
reason
where
the plot-
hear the name Alex Casey and it means something.
Yeah.
There's definitely a lot of like extra meaning that you can get out of things. There's a lot of lore for fans that obviously appeal to them quite a bit. Also, like the Federal Bureau of Control's role and everything is kind of interesting.
With the amount of times that got name dropped when I was watching you play, I was like, I'm glad I've played Control, so that means more to me.
You read a lot of their folders and a lot of their case files on the area because they're studying the entirety of Bright Falls. And there is a couple of characters that are name dropped in like the files that you read, and there is one character that makes a very fun appearance.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm
I'm
excited
not
to
going to say
play
who,
at
but
some
it's
point.
very fun. And I can only imagine where they're going to go with this crazy connected universe in the future.
Seriously.
Because like the entire like Federal Bureau of Control's existence essentially means they can do whatever wacky.
I think we
crazy,
know
weird
Control
shit
2
they
is
want.
happening, right? Like they've confirmed that there is a Control 2 in the works, right?
Oh.
Let's see.
I think they have. I don't think we've gotten like an official trailer or announcement or anything, but I think they said their next project is Control 2. But I could be speaking out of my butt here, so let me.
I wonder
This
what
is,
else
this
they
is
could
right
do
from
with
their
it,
website.
though.
This is right from Remedy's website. Remedy Entertainment has signed an agreement with 505 Games, who published
Yeah, so
Control,
they're working on it.
to co-develop and publish Control 2. Okay, so yeah, it's happening. Yeah, no, this game is really, really good. I think there are parts of it that I'm not the biggest fan of. I think a bigger focus
Apparently,
on...
so Wyatt, apparently they also are working on Max Payne 1 and 2 remakes.
Yes, they are.
Ooh.
So
So I
a
guess
lot
they
of what
do
we're
have access
seeing-
to the characters, right? At least in some degree, because it is in
Yes.
co-development with Rockstar, so it is.
Well, that's the thing,
Rockstar
yeah.
holds the IP, but
Which is maybe why they can't connect out.
Yeah,
like,
they might
Max
not be able to
Payne
use it in their own game.
universe.
maybe they don't
but-
want to do it yet. Maybe they're like, oh, Alex Casey.
See,
will
they-
become Max
they-
Payne.
But see, like they hint at it so much. They like tease you with it because in a lot of Alan Wake sections, you're going around to events where it's Alex Casey's inner monologue on this case that he's
Mhm.
following up on, and it's literally just monologues from Max Payne, like cut monologues essentially. He's like Max Payne. He even has like the same like leather jacket and like the tie and everything. Like it looks just like him. He's just not. He's ah.
I legitimately think your brain might be exploding. Like
With excitement in a
what
good
this
way.
seems like. The more that this goes on,
Yeah,
it's super fascinating.
It's super great. I again, I think in terms of like Game of the Year talk, because there's so many contenders for Game of the Year this year.
Yeah, it's such a
I
stack
think
game.
I think for me this one isn't quite there. Again, I think there are times where it is very slow to a point where it's like, okay, something can happen now. Not to a point where I think it really like takes away from the game too much. I wouldn't call it a walking simulator, as some people have called it, which is a completely ridiculous thing to say. But sometimes it goes on for like a just a.
It's more of a slow
hair too
burn.
long. It's definitely a slow burn, and that might just be my ADHD brain talking.
I would be
No,
super
I-
curious because you haven't played RE4 remake yet. If
No.
you get to it at some point, I would be super curious. to hear
It's
your
on sale right
comparisons.
now. I'm tempted because
'Cause
it's on sale.
I think you might be into it beyond the village, the early like town part of it. I think that you've already played. That is the part that you might not like as much. But I'm super curious
I
because
think
I've
I
heard a lot
just
of
played
takes
that
on it.
section incorrectly. I think is what happened.
Yeah,
The way you
also
described
can
it,
just pro tip: shoot the bell. You can skip the whole section.
I did hear about that. I did hear about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
No, I'm
an important
interested
note to know. But
I'm interested to go back. This has been such a crazy year for survival horror games, man. Like,
yeah,
dang, it has gotten a real shot in the arm this year.
because
I
like
think
Dead
so
this is a
Space
far
remake
they
was
didn't
end of
ruin it.
last year, and then RE4 remake, Alan Wake, tons of indie stuff came out too. It was really good. So
I wonder what next year holds for us. I can't wait. I'm so excited.
Squad.
Oh yeah.
Silent Hill 2 remake is gonna make me the new member of the Suicide
That's right. Can we
Squad.
let's sidebar here for a second? I think we're done talking about the games that we played, but can we talk about Silent Hill Ascension for a second? Because my lord,
I'd really rather not want to brush my teeth with a shotgun, but sure.
Silent Hill Ascension soft launched a little while ago. For those who don't know, this is a mobile Silent Hill weird little thing that I don't think was made by Bloober Team. I
Weird-
don't think we can blame them
No,
for this.
Bloober
Weird
had
little
no
thing
part.
is the best way to describe it. Weird little thing.
That's
just-
being
I just
generous.
took
Kind of offensive little thing is actually what I think you can more refer to it as. It's sitting at a 1.7 on the Google Play Store right now.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Seems about
Yeah,
right.
I just took a sip that probably equated to a fourth of my White Russian, so I think I'm ready now.
Yeah. Just the thing that I've heard about this is it was meant to be like everyone watches and gets to make like community driven decisions, which of course is not going to work in a free to play game, because that means people are going to just make the funniest decisions possible every time as happens, or the safest decisions. And then you have, because they have an ability to like buy the right decision or something if you want to.
What?
You can pay money to get to like force the decision that you want to make happen. You can force the bad things to happen. So there were apparently people that were just like buying all the bad decisions and making people play those. And I was like, this is simultaneously super funny, and what a dystopian thing to do.
It's so dystopian, dude, because on paper this sounds like something that could be interesting. Maybe not could work, but could be interesting. Because we have these funny little things called ARGs that have been around for the last 20 years that are some of the most like interesting stories that have happened on the internet. Like
and
the
you guys
entirety
have phones, right?
Shut up. The entirety of like the original Blair Witch Project's marketing scheme being like an ARG is like one of the earlier examples where that's just kind of like a one-sided, like the story is written, we're just going to give you little like snippets as if it's like real news from this like old school website, which was new school at the time because it was like 1999 or something.
Oh boy.
But nowadays, like we have things like series like The Sun Vanished off the top of my head that I can think of, where it would just be like Twitter posts of this guy who's in an alternate reality from us, where for him the sun is gone and he can hear noises outside and there's weird lights coming through his windows, and he would still like chat with people on his like Facebook and Twitter accounts, and they would kind of like inform where the story would go next. Or things like modern like analog horror ARGs, where like again like the creator will like take into account like what the community is finding with puzzles and stuff, that are like up to individual people who know how to solve hex code to solve, or things like that. Like even like Marble Hornets, like the classic example, has stuff like that where there's like puzzles or just like things that are on the screen on like some like B channel for one frame. And if you run it through a spectrometer, it'll give you like an image of a thing that you need to use to understand one of the other videos on some other side of the internet or something. Like that's, people have been doing that successfully for literally decades now. At least the last 20 years.
Why would you mention a frame of time, Brett?
Because now it's scary. Now
Why
it's
would you
even
make me
worse
feel that way?
that they fucked it up. And they didn't do the ARG route. They went like the weird like Black Mirror like Netflix special route, where like like you go into
with
a
the
chat room.
Kahoot answers.
It feels like Kahoot with like a tinge of rust on it. And you look at like a screenshot.
Someone's running at the character with a knife. Boom, dun, 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 dun,
dun. Like in my head, I'm already running into this issue of like, let's say, let's put Silent Hill Ascension's quality aside for a second. Let's say you're really getting into the story, right? It provides you, you're getting into it, and then it provides you with a choice. It's like, you can do this or you can do this. And then it's like, I want to do this decision because that's what I think this character would do, or that's where I want this story to go, or however you
someone with money says no.
No, exactly. And then it's like, oh, so the story didn't go the way that I chose. So what's even the point?
But why? Now I need you to ask yourself this question: is what if you were watching that one night and the thing didn't go the way you wanted to? What if you realized upon tuning in for the next night that the events were literally one-to-one exactly the same, just with a different character model for the player character?
What?
I'm so stunned by this game.
What?
This is, and calling it a game is generous at this point, right?
It is.
Like, even on mobile, you've got so many better options than Silent Hill Ascension.
Go play Genshin Impact. That's a better
option.
option.
Literally the original Five Nights at fucking Freddy's at this point.
Go play Honkai Star Rail. Like,
yeah.
I mean, you want a fun mobile game? Go play Device 8 if you've ever played Device 8 before. No,
never heard of that. Okay. What is it?
It's really cool. It's like you're reading a story, but then the words on the page become like a puzzle game, and so sometimes you have to like scroll back further in the story to go to a door that was locked before, but it's all done via text. No, it's like a game that you can get for like $5.
Puzzles, you
That's
say?
like the only thing that you pay for.
Can I change my username to be something horribly racist and not be reprimanded for it for an entire week?
We're definitely going to reprimand you for that. Yeah, that's not.
Yeah, that's another thing is that I don't think they realized that people would actually play it because people have been saying horrible things in the chat because the chat is just open to anything. And the chat will censor things like Kojima and scam, but it will not censor things like the N-word. So people, just for the first few nights that it was a thing, were abusing it horribly, as you would imagine that the internet does, and then they finally decided that was a problem.
So what you're saying is they have their priorities straight.
Absolutely. But now there are censors in place, but only for chat items and not for people's usernames. So now people are just naming themselves offensive things, and that's what's going through.
Wait,
of course.
Hold up. I have breaking news. One of the developers of this game is Bad Robot Productions.
Yes.
What's that?
Yes.
That's J.J. Abrams' production company.
Yes.
No.
What?
No. What?
Is this going to be like a surprise, like Cloverfield
It's
movie?
exactly.
What? Wait.
Exactly.
Is that what's happening here?
I don't know.
What?
It's such a disaster. I don't know. I don't know how any of this could go past like any marketing of any company on the planet and like just be given the green light. It's just so strange.
Wait, this is also developed
try
by
not to laugh
Behavior
challenge
Interactive?
game.
Wait a minute. What? But they make like good multiplayer horror games. What are they doing here?
Not anymore.
I guess you
now
could
they
call
make
this
Silent Hill
multiplayer.
Ascension.
I guess you could call this multiplayer,
Wait,
not a game.
Did you say Saber Interactive? Is that
Behavior?
The guys who did the guys who do Dead by Daylight.
No.
Look,
no, they can't make something this bad.
Who should be trusted with a Silent Hill game?
Oh my god.
Oh man!
Do you guys remember the Silent Hill Diablo clone on the PSP? This is why you should give Silent Hill to Western devs to develop.
Brett, you keep saying words that make me question what timeline we're in.
Well, I'm sorry for bringing you into this one, but they're real.
And they can hurt you.
And they very much can hurt you. I don't know. I don't know.
Crazy.
I don't know how much. It's weird because like I don't know how much of a hand Konami themselves had in dealing with this. Because I don't think either.
You can buy you can buy options, so I'm assuming a heavy one.
But that's the thing is that you can like the Metal Gear Solid re-releases were just released as them, and you could buy them individually. And people who want to run them at 90,000 frames a second don't know how a fucking PS1 game works. So most of the complaints come from that.
Do they at least? I remember this was the thing. Do they at least have the NTSC version as well as the PAL version for the?
Yeah. It changes. Okay. They have NTSC, PAL, and Japanese versions that I think, I think they all run it at 60 even. But like that's the thing. It's weird because now it seems like they're on their ascension back to. Whoa. I'm sorry for saying that as you were drinking wine. I didn't. Where they're trying to get back into like it's. They're trying to get back into like positive view in the public, you know. So I don't know. It feels like this just slipped by without them realizing. Yeah, that this is just a horrible decision, and as a result, it really has made me not excited for the future of the franchise at all, and has made me very, very, very doomer about it. And I'm not excited for what this next year is going to bring for Silent
hey, Brett,
Hill.
Didn't you know that the people that are playing the game right now, they're not getting the best version, right? Because they're going to edit these live streams in the app into actual episodes that everyone else can watch. And then we can watch it without all of the obnoxious Twitch chat and stream.
And
stuff.
by watch, you mean completely forget about and
Completely
not watch
forget
at
about.
all.
I will
they
happily
trying to
watch the
recreate-
6-hour YouTube retrospective in a year.
Yeah, true.
The retrospect, yeah.
Like, here's the thing: if you want to play like a horror movie that you interact with as well, just go play.
Go play Until Dawn, The
Until
Dory,
Dawn, yeah.
Dark Pictures, any of those games.
Maybe not the last few Dark Pictures.
Maybe don't play Dark Pictures. Play The Quarry. Play play Until Dawn. But yeah, wow. Because I was hearing you guys talking about it. You guys had posted a screenshot of the UI in our on our Discord.
The good news
I was like,
it's
wow,
not,
this. And I was like,
looks
wow,
terrible.
it's not the fisheye lens, and
I
that's
was like,
the only good news.
I was like, wow, this looks like trash. But then hearing you
You
guys
have a problem
describe,
with fish eyes, Alex? Is that you got an issue
then-
with this?
Not
hearing-
at all. Not with that.
hearing you guys describe this whole thing to me, I'm like, oh wow, this is like way worse than I was expecting.
It's literally the worst.
Wow.
Like, imagine
Is this mind-boggling?
you have like 3 releases in a row that will be considered for like the rest of time by people with brains that don't only play Fortnite and FIFA as like transcending the medium of video games and becoming straight up like just art fully. And every single release after that for the next like 10 years was just ass, and then they just stopped making games for another 10 years, and the thing they come back with is this. It's just the worst. I really do feel like a fucking Mega Man fan now, where we just can't get a break anymore, and just everything that happens is
You're a
bad.
Sonic fan.
Maybe
Here's a
Blue
question.
Team will prove us all wrong, right? Like, at
I
least
would go crazy.
they've proven that they can put together a competent video game. Whether or not that
This
means
is
they can put
true.
together a good, like, horror Silent Hill game, I think is an entirely separate
They've
thing.
also, I think we've had this discussion too. They've also proven that they can pull off some good horror sequences.
Mhm.
Maybe not consistently, but there's
Consistency is the real problem, right? Like that
Yeah.
seems to be Blue Team's fault point. But I hope the remake is good.
Here's a question that I have that I think is an interesting question that we need to ask about a good few more games throughout our podcast, our podcasting bits. What do you think, with how awful it is, what would be the reaction of like a parent that it's just like this is their one game that they're buying that they're able to sink time into? Do you think they'd be able to Stockholm syndrome their way into liking this at
No,
all?
because you don't buy it. This is a free mobile game.
Oh yeah, free.
No,
This is a free
yeah.
mobile game. You're not buying this. If you do, I don't know what's up with you. You're
Oh, wait, you mentioned microtransactions though. Is that basically to ensure that your choice is the one that's picked by the community, or something?
There's
Like,
a
how does that
season
work?
pass. I think you can make your
There's a
like.
season
for what?
pass.
For what?
You can make your.
None of us played this game,
characters
Wyatt. I think it's
wear
important to
different
say that Brett
things
and I
on
don't
your end. I don't know.
actually know. We're not playing this
It's like-
game. Like,
It's like buying a season pass for like 13 Reasons Why or something. Like, who gives? Like, why? What are you doing? Like,
Oh, you do buy the season pass. It's your Netflix subscription.
Oh my god! It's a Netflix subscription for one show that's bad.
Exactly. It's not even worth it. Like, I can't even imagine. Look, dude, when like white moms can't even salvage your product, you know you failed. I don't know. Like, they will watch anything, and if you can't even get them as part of your demographic,
Hey, listen,
It's-
white,
it's
white
Housewives of
moms made
Silent
it.
Hill County.
yeah.
Oh my god!
That's a great parody idea.
I'd watch that.
That's a great sketch.
Wait, that's a real thing?
No, but
Oh.
that would be.
It needs to be. It needs to be a parody now. That's
that would
that's
be
a fantastic
so
idea.
funny.
All right.
Everything
Well,
Silent Hill is a parody now.
we've run our full time. We've talked a lot about things that I don't think we intended to talk about at all, which is great. A lot of content this episode. It does mean so we were going to talk about the Bungie stuff in a separate video. I think we're going to push that to next week now because we've gone past our time allotment by a good amount. So
I'm dressed up as Kakui, and I'm not prepared to be sad tonight.
I was thinking it would be
can't
fun
do
to
this
do
to
a
me,
lower end
Ryan.
costume to bring the vibes back up a little bit, but I think we'll need to do that next time and devote some time to it because oh boy have we been paying attention to the Bungie stuff.
Just for a funeral, ladies and gentlemen.
I get to talk so much, and I get to be so sad.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
doomer.
for reference, Alex and I
We all
are
do.
caught up. Like, we're caught up with Destiny, and very often in the past have raided together. We haven't really done it in the last couple months, but
their teammates have been busy with
yeah,
other games because
getting a
this
raid
is
team
such a
together
good year
is
for
a hard
games.
time, but because it's a really good year for games. But yeah, we'll talk about it and have some chats, and maybe have a funeral toast.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you have the annual pass for, I believe. Oh my god, the Final Shape.
Yeah, I've already got
Yeah.
it because I have a friend who works there that we traded.
I hope
I
you're
gave
prepared
him.
to wait.
Look,
Yeah, we're about to have a 7th-month season, which is the longest delay there has ever been.
That's
So
longer
you're
than a
hard at
Halo,
Halo
Infinite
Infinite.
season.
This is gonna be. I kind of wish they would just be like Season of the Witch is gonna be extended by a month, and the next one will be we're gonna make it 6 months instead of 7 months, just to minimize the problem. But we'll talk about this next week. We have a lot to get into here. Our Game Pass Games Club for the games we talked about in October, which is Oblivion, Morrowind, and I don't remember what the other two are.
Oblivion,
Battlefield
Morrowind,
2042.
Battlefield
and which we still need to play together for a session,
Yes.
and Lies of P, I believe.
You
right?
guys are
Those
welcome.
I feel like that's going to be a
Yes,
good.
sir.
I think next week will be a combo episode of us playing Battlefield 2042 and talking about Destiny. I think that's going to be the perfect combination. Of,
Saltiest episode
Salt.
physically possible.
Holy
Oh my god.
I think you all have created a perfect storm here. So we're going to go ahead
You're
and do
welcome.
that for next week.
You're welcome.
Uh,
Wow.
That's the upcoming stuff.
Heinous.
We've got lots of fun things spinning. Spider-Man 2 Games Club will be on the docket for as soon as I'm able to finish it, which will likely be this week or something. So it'll be coming up into this month or something. Maybe a nice Thanksgiving special for everyone will be our Spider-Man takes. And then hopefully we can get back on the train of continuing the Arkham series thing we were trying to do this year, but then every good game ever came out in the same year. We didn't have time. So,
I kept meaning to ask you about that.
no, what literally has happened is that all of us were just like, we want to play the new games, and so there was no way to fit them in the time. But
And also originally the series was supposed to lead up to Suicide Squad,
which
and
has
then
been
that got
kind of
delayed.
delayed indefinitely.
You guys have time. It's
Definitely.
Not indefinitely, but you don't know. We'll see when the Suicide Squad comes out. But yeah, that's everything. That's the end of the episode. As
We have
always,
shoutouts, don't we?
Tuesdays. Alex, good save. Look, I'm recovering from COVID brain. I can go ahead and hear all. This is a good chance to use your funny sounds, funny haha sounds if you want to.
Oh, you can. I have something very serious and interesting for a shout out here.
Oh.
Look at the size of this grape.
What a shout out!
This is huge. Look, it will take 3 bites to eat this.
That is
Yeah.
a thumb-sized grape.
It is a thumb-sized grape. Also, because I'm in Kakyoin, I'm gonna do some heinous shit with food right now.
This is a nightmare.
This is the scariest thing that's happened the entire episode, and we've been
I'm-
talking about Bungie and Silent Hill Ascension.
I'm doing the cherry licking thing, but with grapes because I'm allergic to cherry.
I don't think they know
No,
what
I
the cherry
didn't know
looking thing is,
that.
Alex.
Let's move on. Who's next? Who's next? Who's next? I'll go to end this nightmare. I'll go. Shout out to a lovely little Halo Infinite session that I had with Brett a couple days ago. He had fun. He had
Why?
fun
Wow.
playing the video game.
Why? Wouldn't you know that I couldn't think of anything else, so I was going to shout out the same thing. The game is acceptable now.
Halo
it-
Infinite starts shaping up. Bungie is collapsing.
It's
Another
yes,
finger on the monkey's
exactly.
paw rolls in.
I saw that post too.
Yep.
It is really weird, but they don't have whatever they don't have true purple and orange yet. So one of us won't be.
I will still
happy,
continue to be upset
unfortunately.
about that
Excuse me.
until
They do have a purple and orange armor coating.
And
it
like
looks
a lot of
really
gray.
You do have to
bad.
buy the battle
It's like
pass.
yeah.
You know,
I
it's called pumpkin spice. It
No.
looks pretty good.
No.
It looks pretty good.
you can also drink it in latte form.
Boy, don't I know.
I can imagine.
It's
But no,
the
it's
fall
fun now.
season.
They have a good version of Infection. You know, I think there's a lot of game modes now.
There's
They
maps in the
reduced
game.
the maps are. I mean, I've always been a fan of the maps, but
No, I'm
they
saying there
also
are
have-
maps now.
That's fair. That's fair. They've also reduced their seasons down to 4 months, which I feel like is a pretty good place to be in for season length.
Yeah.
Until you
they've
have to
also-
delay.
Inevitably.
They've also
No, that's Bungie. That's Bungie. That's not 343.
Often confused. They also they also have changed the way that their seasons work now. So there's only 50 tiers, and in every single tier, there's actually stuff that you want to get. So they've removed a lot of the junk.
As
They've
opposed
removed
to
a lot
like,
of,
oh, here's a little bit of currency.
yeah,
of
they've
generic
removed
currency type
well.
thing.
Well, actually, the currency is kind of nice because they give you just enough of their in-game currency in a season in order to buy the next season for free.
Oh yes, they do the deep rock thing.
Yeah. So you
Oh,
only have
that's
to
so
buy,
nice.
So you only
That's
have to buy
also
into
that is
one
the
season.
Fortnite thing. That originated with Fortnite.
Yeah.
Just to make sure you're all crediting the right game. That's a fork knife.
I know, but
Give
not all
Fortnite
games
the
do
credit
it.
it deserves.
But here's the thing, though, Ryan. Here's the thing. The one up that Halo Infinite has is that because the seasons don't go away once you buy them. Once you buy it, even if the
Oh.
season's over,
I'm a big fan of that.
you can still get every single season for free after that because it never goes away, which is really nice. They've also and the math has been done. The seasons are shorter, so there's less grind and there's more actual stuff that you're getting out of it.
Nice.
So it's
Mhm.
like half the
There you go.
time and like more content, more like unlocks, which is great. I think they have a really good version of Infection, and they're just releasing content at a good steady pace. They've also recently announced that they're going to be completely reworking networking. They're gonna we're just gonna gut the entire fucking thing and start from the
Thank
bottom.
God.
Yeah. So it's in a good spot now. It's not perfect. They had a long ways to go, but the march forward is there, and it's in good.
Would you say it's a march of the
good momentum.
Murlocs? Marching forward.
Why don't you
we
go now,
we
Ryan?
need
What's
that
your
specific
shout-out?
sound for the
My shout-out-
soundboard, Ryan.
This little Disney watch. Oh my
It's a
god.
Mickey Mouse from
It's a
Kingdom
Fantasia
Hearts.
watch.
Why
Doing the
why is it
Fantasia
half
thing.
why
My
is it
favorite
half
Kingdom
Roman
Hearts
numerals
character.
and half
I
regular
don't
numbers?
know, Alex. That's a great question that I ask myself every time I look at it. I think it's to be quirky. I think this is a quirky watch. But it was relatively inexpensive. So
Quirky
you
actors
know,
are just.
I like a quirky watch. You know, I only wear quirky watches.
And you know too, if that was a Donald Duck watch, it'd be called a Quack watch instead of a quirky one.
Are you on Quack right now, Wyatt?
All right. Well, we were really dredging the bottom of the barrel here.
I think I've just had too much grog.
For sure. Okay, so that's the end of the episode. As usual, Tuesday mornings, Tuesday evenings, 7 a.m., 7 p.m. Pacific time, podcast platform of your choice and all that. This one's going to be up on like a Sunday night at a random time because we missed last week, and so it's going up when we're done with it, but normally at other times. We'll see you next week for a jam session of talking about two terrible situations.
Fantasia is the best Disney movie.
It is the best Disney movie.
And
Yeah.
you can quote me
Quite
on
good.
that.
It's quite good. Cars 2 though.